Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. They all thought I was crazy. Every time I stocked up on canned goods, vacuum-sealed water packets, or ammo for my crossbow, my neighbors rolled their eyes. My brother used to joke that I'd die of boredom before anything real ever happened. Even my ex left me because she said I was obsessed with doom. But I wasn't obsessed, I was prepared. For years, I studied the patterns, historic plagues, strange disappearances, even the way animals behave before something unnatural breaks loose. And when that alert came through my shortwave radio, coded, cryptic, and chilling, I knew it was real. The government didn't use that channel unless everything had gone sideways. I had set it to play through my speakers on a loop every night, just in case. At 2:13 a.m., the loop broke. Static hissed, and a calm voice said 5 words I'll never forget. Secure shelter. Avoid the infected. That was it. No long message, no press conference. Just 5 words. I didn't panic, I didn't question it. I moved. First thing I did was pull the blackout shutters down. I've practiced it 100 times. Metal panels sliding over each window like a second skin. Then I locked every interior door. My cabin, deep in the Smoky Mountains, was already reinforced, but protocol demanded redundancy. I checked my cameras. Motion alerts were going off all around the perimeter. Wildlife was acting erratic. Deer stumbling like they'd been tranquilized. Birds flying in tight circles. And something else. Something that looked human but wasn't. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure was staggering down the trail, arms limp, head lolling to one side. Its eyes glinted white under the night vision filter, and it was making a low sound, like a growl swallowed by a gurgle. I'd seen enough fake footage online to know what a hoax looked like. This wasn't one. I turned on my scanner, listening for chatter. Voices came through, crackled and panicked. A police officer begging for backup. A dispatcher trying to stay calm as someone screamed in the background. And then silence. 12 years I've waited for something like this. That moment wasn't about fear, it was validation. I strapped on my gear, tactical vest, reinforced gloves, steel-toed boots. I had a plan, one I'd rehearsed 100 times in my head. Step 1, lockdown, done. Step 2, observe, underway. Step 3, survive the first 12 hours. Because if you made it through the first 12, you had a shot. I pulled up the map of the valley. Closest town was Pine Creek, population about 3,000. Good people, small town life, the kind of place where everyone knew each other. They didn't stand a chance. And I couldn't help them, not yet. From my roof-mounted drone, I watched the roads fill with flickering headlights, some speeding, some stopped. A school bus was sideways in a ditch. A minivan had all 4 doors open, lights flashing and no one inside, and in the distance, smoke. The outbreak had begun, and I was ready. At 3:07 a.m., I heard the first knock. Not on the door, on the outer gate, metal on metal, rhythmic, clumsy. I muted everything, moved to the security screen and zoomed in. A man. Early 40s maybe, flannel shirt soaked in something dark. His hands were bruised and his head lolled forward, like it was too heavy for his shoulders. He kept hitting the gate, like he didn't understand it wouldn't open. He wasn't using tools. He wasn't shouting. Just thumping. Again and again. I watched him for 15 minutes. No change. He didn't tire, didn't pause, just kept going. Then another showed up. A woman, barefoot, limping, mouth moving like she was whispering to herself. She stumbled into the man, bounced off, then joined him. 2 sets of hands now, battering the gate with a dull persistence. I counted. By 4:20 a.m., there were 9 of them. But none of them looked coordinated. No strategies. No tools. Just instinct. Like something buried deep in the brain had woken up and taken over. I called them hollowed. Not the real term, probably, but it felt right. Empty people, driven by something they couldn't control. Still, they weren't the problem yet. Not until they learned how to climb or break something stronger than their hands. So, I turned my focus to Pine Creek. The road was 20 miles downhill, twisting through forest and rock. I knew every turn, every patch of loose gravel, every blind corner. But I never thought I'd need to drive it while scanning for people who might be changed. I had to go. I didn't want to, but I had to. There was one person down there who might have listened to me. Sheriff Dalton. We'd argued plenty over the years, mostly over beers and poker, but he respected my preparations. Said I'd be the last man standing if the world ever tilted. I figured if anyone was still holding the town together, it'd be him. I grabbed my bug-out pack, checked my weapons, and unlocked the garage hatch under my cabin. The armored ATV inside had a roof turret, extra fuel, and tires rated for rugged terrain. I built it for exactly this kind of run. The gate rattled behind me as I fired up the engine. The hollow didn't flinch. They didn't run or scream. Just turned and started walking after me, slow and aimless. I hit the trail hard. The forest at night is usually peaceful, but not that night. Every shadow moved, every tree creaked. Once, I passed a bear, its eyes wide, ears back, whimpering as it ran from something deeper in the woods. By the time I reached the ridge above Pine Creek, the sun was just starting to bleed into the sky, and what I saw made my stomach twist. Smoke rose from the town square. Several buildings were burning, no one putting out the flames. Cars were scattered everywhere, some crashed, some abandoned in the middle of the road. A figure staggered into the street, dragging a broken leg behind it, followed by 2 more. I parked behind a rock outcrop, lifted my binoculars, and scanned for movement. That's when I saw the sheriff's cruiser. It was half crushed against a telephone pole, red and blue lights still flashing. The windshield was smashed in. I couldn't see anyone inside. I couldn't just sit there. So I went in. Down the hill, across the back roads, avoiding the main drag. The closer I got, the worse the smell, like rust, ash, and mold, all mixing in the rising heat. The town I'd known all my life had become something else, something quiet and dangerous. The wind carried sounds I didn't recognize, soft moans, feet dragging, glass crunching. I parked in the alley behind the sheriff's office, slipped out, and made my way to the front. The door was open, lights flickering inside, and behind the front desk was Sheriff Dalton. He was alive. Barely. Sheriff Dalton was slumped behind the desk, one hand gripping a pistol, the other pressed tight against his ribs. His uniform was shredded, soaked through with something dark, and his eyes were glassy but focused. He looked up at me and gave a weak, lopsided grin. Of all the people to walk through that door, had to be you. I dropped beside him, checked the wound. It was bad, deep, jagged. Not a bite, more like shrapnel or broken glass. Maybe from the wreck. You alone? I asked. Dot. He gave a small nod. Wasn't always. Had a deputy and a nurse here with me. Lost him an hour ago when those things pushed through the back wall. He motioned to a red button on the desk. I hit the emergency alert. Told dispatch to send help. Then I realized, there is no help, is there? No, I said quietly. There isn't. He coughed, winced, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded map. "Look," he whispered. "Before they hit us, we got a call from Wayland Creek, 40 miles east. Same thing happened there. People going strange, vanishing, turning. But they mentioned something else." He unfolded the map with shaky fingers, pointing to a spot near the river bend. "Old power substation. Shut down years ago. Black vans were spotted heading in and out days before the outbreak." "You think this started there?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Feels like more than some random virus, doesn't it?" I didn't answer, because I'd thought the same thing. Before I could ask more, he leaned in closer. "If I turn, don't let me hurt anyone." "You're not going to turn," I said, even though I wasn't sure. His grip tightened around my wrist. "Promise me." I nodded, jaw clenched. Then he pulled a key from around his neck and pressed it into my hand. "Jail cells downstairs. One of them's got something you need to see." I stood, scanned the room. The place had been ransacked. Bullet holes in the walls. Blood smeared across the floor in finger-shaped streaks. Whatever happened here wasn't just an attack, it was a siege. Downstairs was worse. One of the holding cells had been torn open. Metal bent inward, like something had pulled it apart from the outside. The walls were scratched. Deep grooves, like claws or tools, or both. But the far cell, the one with the reinforced door, was still sealed. I slid the key into the lock, hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a man, or what used to be one. He sat perfectly still in the corner, eyes closed, breathing slow. No wounds, no infection that I could see. He wore a hazmat suit, half unzipped, and on the front was a faded patch. R4 Biosecurity Division. When I stepped inside, his eyes opened, pale, sharp. "Too late," he said, calm as anything. "It's already in the air." "What is?" He didn't answer, just looked at me with something like pity. "They said it would be controlled, contained, a temporary solution to an overgrown problem." "Who's they?" I asked. But he smiled, closed his eyes again. "You'll see. In 12 hours, the ones left standing won't recognize the world anymore." I stared at him, my pulse pounding. "How do we stop it?" His reply chilled me to the core. "You don't?" Suddenly, the lights flickered. A heavy thud sounded from above, another, then glass shattering. I ran back up the stairs. The front door was gone, blown inward, and Sheriff Dalton's chair was empty. Then I saw the blood trail. It led out into the street. I followed the blood trail out into the street, keeping low behind a burned-out pickup. Dawn was fully breaking now, but the light didn't make anything feel safer. If anything, it made it worse. The streets were coated in ash and broken glass, and the air buzzed with this low, almost electric hum, like the whole world was vibrating just slightly out of tune. The trail led toward the fire station, 3 blocks down. I moved fast, crossbow in hand, boots crunching softly over gravel and dust. Something darted across the intersection up ahead. Not a hollowed. This thing was fast, low to the ground. Barefoot, maybe. It didn't stumble like the others. It moved like it had purpose. That's when I realized something terrifying. They were evolving. Or some of them were different from the start. I ducked behind a van, heart pounding. I could hear movement, a kind of fast scraping across the pavement. Then silence. I waited, held my breath. And then, Sheriff Dalton's voice. But it didn't sound right. "Help," it called out. I peeked out, no one was there. Then the voice came again. "Help me." From inside a storm drain. I stepped closer, crossbow raised. The grate had been pulled off and set to the side. Something was definitely down there. Then I saw it. Not Dalton. Not anything like him. Something pale and slick, crouched in the tunnel, imitating his voice like a recording. Choppy. Unnatural. Help me. Its eyes locked with mine, and for a moment, it just watched. Then it retreated into the darkness. I backed away slowly. My legs were ice. Whatever that was, it wasn't part of the outbreak I'd prepared for. It was worse. Dalton was gone. His trail ended a block away at a smashed squad car. His badge lay in the street, bent and covered in ash. I picked it up, not knowing why. That's when I made the call. I had to get out, regroup, and go to the substation he mentioned. I wasn't going to survive just by waiting things out anymore. The drone footage back at my cabin might have caught something useful. Movement patterns, other survivors. Maybe even footage of how this all started. But first, I needed supplies. There was a gas station on the edge of town, one of those older ones with a metal cage over the windows and a hand-crank generator out back. I headed there on foot, keeping to side alleys. The place looked deserted when I arrived. No sign of movement. Doors were locked, but the side window had been busted in. I slipped through, careful not to cut myself on the broken glass. Inside, the shelves were half looted, but I found what I needed. Protein bars, a first aid kit, bottled water, even a crank radio. Then I heard footsteps in the back. Human ones. I raised my crossbow. "Come out slow," I said. A voice replied, shaky, scared, young. "Don't shoot, I'm not one of them." From behind a shelf stepped a girl. Maybe 17, maybe younger. Dirt-smudged face, hoodie too big for her frame. No bite marks, no wounds. Just wide, terrified eyes. "My name's Lila," she said. "I've been hiding here since last night." I kept my weapon lowered but ready. "You're alone?" She nodded. "My dad, he told me to run. I haven't seen him since." That familiar twist in my gut again. Guilt. The kind I'd buried under layers of preparation and drills. I looked out the window. The streets were too quiet now. Like everything was waiting. I couldn't leave her here. "Come on," I said. "We're leaving." Lila didn't ask many questions. She just followed close, clutching an old metal baseball bat she'd found in the gas station back room. I could tell she was scared, but she moved quiet, kept pace, and didn't complain. That kind of fear, the kind that turns into survival instinct, was rare. I respected it. We cut through backyards and side roads, heading for my ATV. I kept checking the rooftops and alley corners, watching for movement. The quiet wasn't comforting. It was the kind of silence that meant something was wrong, like the town was holding its breath. When we finally reached the ridge and spotted my vehicle parked beneath the brush, I almost let out a sigh of relief. Almost. Until I noticed the passenger side door was slightly open. I hadn't left it that way. I motioned for Lila to stay back, crouched low, and crept forward with my crossbow drawn. My boots made almost no sound over the pine needles. I circled around to the far side and yanked the door open. Empty. No one inside, no signs of struggle, nothing missing. But then I looked closer. Something had been placed on the seat, not dropped, placed. It was a photograph, an old one, faded at the edges, black and white. It showed a group of people standing in front of a warehouse. Their uniforms had the same faded R4 biosecurity patch as the man in the jail cell. Scrawled across the bottom in red ink were 3 words. "We warned them." I turned the photo over. On the back, a set of coordinates was written, latitude, longitude, and a time. 7 a.m. I checked my watch. less than 40 minutes. Change of plans, I told Lila, climbing into the driver's seat. We're heading to the river bend. She didn't ask why. She just climbed in and buckled up. We tore down the hillside trail, ATV growling through mud and gravel. The trees rushed past in blurs, shadows darting between them. I kept glancing at the sky. Something about the clouds looked wrong. Thicker, lower, as if the whole world had sunk a few feet closer to something it wasn't supposed to touch. We reached the old access road to the substation right as the sun broke over the ridgeline. The structure itself looked abandoned. Concrete walls, rusted fencing, and a cracked security booth with weeds growing through the floor. But the front gate was wide open. I pulled up just outside, engine idling. "Stay here," I told Lila. "No way," she said, gripping her bat tighter. "If I stay alone, I'm a target. I'm going with you." I hesitated, then nodded. She was right. Inside, the station was worse than I expected. Old control panels still hummed with a faint blue light. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. On the walls, faded government warning signs and evacuation orders. Most dated years before the outbreak. Whatever happened here didn't start last night. This had been in motion for a long time. We moved slowly down a metal stairwell leading underground. The air got colder with each step, damp and stale, like it hadn't been breathed in years. At the bottom, a wide tunnel stretched out, lit by flickering overhead bulbs. That's where we found the chamber. Steel walls, monitors still glowing. Dozens of oxygen tanks stacked along the walls, and in the center, rows of glass capsules. 8 in total. 7 were shattered. 1 still sealed. Inside was a person, or something that used to be one. Its skin was pale and translucent, stretched too tightly over its bones. Tubes ran into its arms and chest. It wasn't moving, but its eyes were open, watching us. A terminal nearby still worked. Lines of data scrolled by, chemical names, test results, file labels. Then a video flickered on the screen. A man in a lab coat appeared, gray beard, sharp eyes. "This is Dr. Halver's R4 division. If you're seeing this, containment has failed." He paused, took a deep breath. "We engineered a pathogen designed to deactivate aggression in test subjects, meant for use in war zones, to pacify resistance without lasting harm. At first, it worked. The video glitched. But then something changed. Subjects stopped responding to commands. They began mimicking speech, movement. Their brains adapted, grew. Another glitch. We tried to destroy the batch, but not before exposure occurred. I take full responsibility. This wasn't meant for the public. We weren't ready." The screen went black. Then a final line of text blinked on screen. Estimated full spread time, 12 hours. I looked at my watch. It had been exactly 10. The screen flickered once more and went dark for good. I stood there, staring at the lifeless terminal, the reflection of those glass pods still burning in my eyes. The one remaining figure inside the chamber didn't move, but something about the way it watched us made my skin crawl, like it wasn't asleep, like it was waiting. "Is it alive?" Lila whispered. I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew. That thing wasn't just alive, it was aware. A soft alarm began beeping from one of the consoles. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, steady pulse like a ticking clock. I checked the screen. It displayed a simple countdown. 1 hour, 58 minutes. "What happens when that hits 0? Lila asked. "I don't want to find out," I said. "Let's move." We retraced our steps, heading back through the tunnel, past the shattered containment pods, up the stairwell into the stale morning air. The sky was still a strange color, grayish-orange, like the sun had forgotten how to rise properly. The entire forest felt off. Still, too still. We were halfway to the ATV when Lila grabbed my arm. "Do you hear that?" I stopped, and I did. A faint sound from the woods, like humming. No, chanting. Low, rhythmic, and completely unnatural. Then the trees began to move. Not from wind, from figures, a dozen or more, stepping out from the tree line in total silence. Not stumbling like the others. These ones moved together, slow and steady, faces blank, but with purpose in their steps. The evolved ones. We didn't wait to see what they wanted. We ran. The ATV roared to life, and we peeled out onto the cracked road, tires throwing gravel as we tore away from that cursed station. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. The map led us back toward my cabin, but every mile between us and safety looked worse than the last. Cars on fire. Buildings half collapsed. Some of the infected just stood in the roads, watching us pass with heads tilted slightly to one side, like they recognized us. I knew then the outbreak wasn't just spreading. It was learning. We reached the cabin with 10 minutes to spare. I got Lila inside, bolted the doors, and fired up the generator. The screens flickered on. My old surveillance feeds still live. I pulled up the local drone footage I'd cached the day before. What I saw made my stomach knot. The infection hadn't just spread across the town, it was everywhere in neighboring counties. Highways, airports. The outbreak had outpaced every emergency system. It was global now. Unstoppable. But one clip caught my attention. A short drone scan over the riverbend just minutes before I'd arrived at the substation. 6 trucks, unmarked, covered in mud, driving away from the site. They weren't responding to the outbreak. They were leaving it behind, they knew. And they'd let it happen. I backed away from the screen. My cabin suddenly felt much smaller. The safe walls, the reinforced windows, all of it felt like a box slowly closing in. "They're not trying to stop it," I muttered. "They're trying to manage the damage." Lila stood in the doorway, pale but steady. "What do we do?" I looked at the countdown on my watch, less than a minute. "We survive," I said. "That's what we do." The final seconds ticked away. I shut off every light, loaded every weapon I had, and stared out into the dim forest beyond the cabin. Then, right as the countdown hit 0, the wind stopped. No breeze, no birds. Just a silence so complete it made my ears ring. And then, from somewhere far off, a sound, like metal screaming, like the world itself had cracked just a little. I didn't move. I just whispered one thing to myself. A promise. This isn't the end, not for me, not yet. Because I've been prepping my whole life for this. And I've only just made it through the first 12 hours. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.